Hanover had been visited by Confederate cavalry on June 27, 1863. Lieutenant Colonel Elijah White brought 275 or so Confederate cavalrymen from Virginia and Maryland into the Hanover area. They stayed for a couple hours in Hanover. They raided most of the stores. They took horses from throughout the countryside. Then they went on to Hanover Junction, destroyed the railroad in Hanover Junction, and then camped for the evening near today's Thomasville area at a little village called Farmers. So the citizens of the Hanover area were a little wary of the fact that they'd already had Confederates in the region. They were very happy. On the morning of June 30th, Tuesday, June 30th, 1863, when Union troops arrived, somewhat unexpectedly. A long column of Federals under Brigadier General Judson Kilpatrick started marching through Hanover, and the Hanover citizens were giving them beer, they were giving them food, pie, cake, and some of the soldiers got these small little things they'd never seen before, which the Germans called pretzels, that a lot of these soldiers had never tasted a pretzel before. And Hanover was the first experience, and many men record in their diaries and letters about this very salty, very tasty snack that the people of Hanover were giving to them. So that all changed later in the morning of June 30th when Confederates coming into the town from the south on the Westminster Pike collided with the 18th Pennsylvania Cavalry near the intersection of Westminster Road and Frederick Street on the south side of Hanover. Stuart, a lot of people think Stuart was out joyriding, but he was actually under orders. He was obeying what he was supposed to, but he was delayed. Stuart's goal was to guard the mountain passes in the Shenandoah Valley and then move to the north and west, come to Pennsylvania, and find the left flank of the Army in Northern Virginia, quote unquote, somewhere along the Susquehanna River. That means York, that means Carlisle, that means Harrisburg. Somewhere in this region he was to find the Confederate Army. However, he fought a skirmish at Rockville, Maryland, captured 175 Union supply wagons, kept most of them, and started dragging them into this area. Fought another battle he didn't expect at Westminster, Maryland on June 29th. That delayed him further. And then he runs smack into Kilpatrick's men who are enjoying their pretzels and beer. And Hanover initiates yet another battle he didn't expect. So while a lot of folks think Stuart was out joyriding, he really wasn't. And then again, his goal was to find Jubal Early or find Richard Ewell's corps somewhere here in Pennsylvania. So he always was heading towards York with a backup plan of Dillsburg and Carlisle. And that's exactly what he would do after the Battle of Hanover, is he would start pulling towards Dover and Dillsburg. Yeah, it was actually quite an accident to me. The Union forces were again marching through town, enjoying the hospitality of the locals, when Confederates who were converging on the same town stumbled onto them. The battle was not planned by either General Stuart or by General Kilpatrick. They ended up having a pretty savage fight on this, particularly along Frederick Street and a couple side alleys, all the way through town to the north side of town near the railroad tracks. So there was bitter fighting going on the early stage of the battle as the Confederates swept into town. Union troops that were already well up into the Abbottstown region had to turn around, come back galloping as fast as they could back down to Hanover to join the battle. So it just kept growing as the morning went on. The sound of the Battle of Hanover could be heard here in York County, throughout the county, in fact. There are reports of the sounds being heard as far north as Dillsburg again. Jubal Early himself was actually withdrawing towards Gettysburg that day after burning the Wrightsville Bridge, or fighting for the Wrightsville Bridge on June 28th. And his men, as far north as Davidsburg, General Early himself, hears the Battle of Hanover. And surprisingly, and unfortunate for the Confederate cause, but fortunate for the Union cause, I guess, General Early never investigates what the noise was to the south, even though a pitched battle is being fought at Hanover in this place where nobody should be. So that's why a lot of folks not only blame Stuart for not being at Gettysburg on time, they blame Jubal Early for not investigating and linking up with Stuart when he clearly heard the battle going on. There weren't a lot of battles in the town in the Civil War. Fredericksburg, of course, in 1862 had some significant fighting in the streets of that. There were several battles in towns, particularly during the retreat, from Gettysburg at places like Funkstown, etc. But yeah, this wasn't common at all at this point in the war. And it goes, what Hanover will turn out to be is the largest military engagement in York County history. Almost 10,000 men will be involved in some manner or format at Hanover. More than 300 of them will be casualties, including a little less than 3 dozen men being killed on the streets of Hanover. Now, what's fascinating about this is there are several Confederate accounts of women and civilians from Hanover shooting at the Confederates from their second floor windows of their houses. They would pop open a shutter and shoot the rebels as they were passing by horseback. I guess one of the dangers of urban warfare is you don't necessarily know who the enemy is. George Armstrong Custer was totally unknown to most people at the time of the Battle of Hanover. He was in his early 20s. He had been promoted from captain to brigadier general just a few days before, having given command of the Michigan Brigade of Cavalry. And so he was new to his men. He was new to the public. Hanover proved to be his first battle as a brigadier general. He did okay. Nothing spectacular. He didn't mess it up or anything. But at Gettysburg, just obviously the next 2 days later, first at Hunterstown and then at Gettysburg's East Cavalry Field, Custer proved himself to be a very aggressive, pretty competent general. A lot of people kind of denigrate the guy for his exploits against the Native Americans, the Little Bighorn, etc. But Civil War, Custer's a pretty efficient officer. He wins most of his battles, does a pretty good job. And Hanover launches his career. The battle kind of petered out from the standpoint that Stuart, his goal wasn't to fight a battle at Hanover. His goal is to find General Early at York as he's under orders. So he starts pulling his men out. He has 3 brigades, each one 1,500 or so men. So he pulls out a Virginia brigade in the early afternoon. They start marching towards Jefferson on the way towards York. And then in the mid-afternoon, he pulls the 2nd Brigade out, leaves his 3rd of his men behind to make sure the Yankees don't pursue. And by nightfall, he's pulled everybody out of Hanover. So he's not intending to win a battle there. He's just now intending to get out, escape with all of his men, and more importantly, in his mind, save the wagon train that he's been lugging ever since he captured it at Rockville. As Stuart leaves, his column will be at one point 17 miles long. It will stretch all the way from Dover, which he'll reach at 2 a.m. on July 1st, all the way back down to York, New Salem. So it's an incredibly long column, very tired men. They've been fighting all day. They've been marching for well over a week, actually closer to 10 days. And so they're exhausted. Many of the men are sleeping in their saddle. And when they finally get to Dover, it's a chance for resting. And at Dover, he makes the decision that he's going on to Carlisle through Dillsburg, just, again, still desperately trying to find the Army of Northern Virginia. Hanover battlefield has been pretty much lost to history through suburban growth. However, in recent years, the town of Hanover has put on a brand new walking trail with brand new interpretive markers, and they're trying to make this more of a Civil War tourist attraction so the folks at Gettysburg can come to Hanover and learn more about the fighting that happened the day before the Battle of Gettysburg with a lot of the same major personalities like Kilpatrick and Custer and Stuart, Fitzhugh, people like that. So I would encourage people to get out, walk the streets of Hanover, look at the markers, have a look at yourself at the largest battle in York County history.